Calcium, the silent killer. Yes, calcium hardness is an often misunderstood and unmonitored destroyer of pool finishes and equipment. Now, there are a couple of ways that you can get into trouble when it comes to calcium. One way is making the mistake of thinking soft water is a great thing in order to prevent calcium scaling. Because you may be able to truck in RO, reverse osmosis, treated water with very low calcium levels. And you might do that thinking, you know, my neighbors with all those nasty calcium lines on their tile, I'm not going to do that. My pool is going to look clean all year round. RO water. But did you know low calcium levels in your pool will cause etching, metal corrosion, and even haziness? Why is that? You would expect it to be the other way around. You would think that high calcium levels are going to cause haziness. Well, we get all these issues because your water demands a certain amount of calcium. If it doesn't have enough, it's going to get it from something. And in your pool, that means your plaster, your stonework, your grout, and even the metal components on your pool equipment. All of that to feed your hungry pool water. And as the water pulls calcium out of these surfaces, the water gets hazy until the calcium can finally go into solution. So that's the problem with low calcium. It's a no-go. And just so you know, reverse osmosis water is going to be about 50 parts per million, which is way too low. The ideal, or the lower limit, I should say, for your calcium level is 200 parts per million. Anything below 200 parts per million, you don't want to do. Now we know our low calcium levels. What about high calcium levels? When do we get into trouble there? Well, it depends based on the rest of your chemistry, but we'll say start worrying about it at 450 parts per million. And as you get to 600 parts per million, this is where you can start stressing out. Not to say that you can't manage your chemistry at these higher levels, but your water gets finicky. It becomes a little difficult to deal with. Now on our scale, you can work out the ideal range, right? Between these two high ends. But we'll say that our ideal is between 200 and 400 parts per million. That gives us a little bit of leeway before it becomes problematic. Now there's a great thing about this is, I don't know about all municipal water supplies, but the average in Texas, the average calcium hardness for a municipal water supply is between 200 and 400 parts per million, which is perfect. Your tap water is probably going to be perfect for your pool. Why are we even talking about calcium hardness? You don't need to worry about it, right? Well, the issue is, let's say you start at a nice midpoint here, 300 parts per million. That's what you get from your hose. Well, with time, this is going to want to graduate upwards. That's because evaporation takes moisture away. You'll lose water out of the pool, but it's going to leave all the minerals behind. And then out of your water supply, you bring some more water in to top up the pool, and so you inch your calcium levels up. So what do you do then to manage this? Well, many people like to use a descaler, so no issue then. Problem solved. Not quite. Descalers, while they are fantastic, we love to use descalers ourselves, they are good at addressing the symptoms that go with high calcium levels. So that means your tile line, your stonework is going to stay clear. However, what it doesn't do is remove the calcium from your water. And so you're going to still have the chemistry issues that come from high calcium levels. Namely, your water balance gets compromised. And to maintain your LSI, which we'll talk about in another video, you'll have to keep lower pH levels and lower alkalinity levels. If you see some of our videos on alkalinity, you'll note that low alkalinity brings its own set of problems and challenges. And so your pool becomes difficult and problematic and susceptible to an issue coming up. If you don't just keep everything just right at all times, things are going to get out of hand. Now, there's another issue with high calcium levels. Calcium behaves a little strangely. So if you were to take table salt and add it to water, the expectation is the hotter that water is, the quicker the table salt is going to dissolve. And if you were to cool the water down and you have enough salt in the water, you'll see salt starting to form around the water line. Well, calcium behaves in the other direction. It's the opposite. So the hotter the conditions, the more the calcium wants to scale. And so you have some very hot components in your pool equipment, namely your heat exchanger and your salt cell. You get high temperatures in those places. It's hot enough that you can overcome the protective effects of your descalers, and the calcium will come out of solution and start to build up in these components. You'll never see it until one day you're faced with a costly repair or even replacement. So how do you deal with this then? What is a good system for managing your calcium hardness? That's what we really want to know. What we like to do is when you're starting up your pool, you can use municipal or trucked water depending on what you have available. Let's say you have a well. With a well, you might start at 600 parts per million or 800 parts per million. So that's really not a good option. So you have to truck it in. If you end up with RO water and you start at 50 parts per million, just use a calcium booster. There are products to get it up to where it needs to be. So boost it up into an appropriate range. Use a descaler to keep your tile line and your stonework clear. But then also monitor your calcium levels. A monthly calcium test will be helpful. And keep track, watch it inch up. And then plan regular partial drains so that you can push this number back down to where it needs to be. Now, the best part of a partial drain is it's going to fix other issues that creep up with your pool chemistry. There are other things that you just have to drain to address. Do that, you'll find yourself spending less money on repairs, not having to replace equipment as frequently, and just having a much more pleasant pool experience. If you found this content helpful, share with a friend in need, because a friend with a pool in need is a friend indeed.